the high school students are the people who are going into college are those high school students. So wanting to get them educated and prepared better for college life. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Logan. And for everyone else, Logan is a member of an awesome team there at Christ Intervention Services in kind of central to southeastern part of Iowa, and had the privilege of working with Logan most recently at Central College just roughly a month or a little bit more than a month ago. So Logan, thanks for joining us today. Rick Hancox. Rick.
Hi, I'm Rick. I'm I guess the new version is Strat 2, special education teacher, old school term BD, 25 years in. I've done residential treatment. I ran our offsite level 3 program for 18 years, and I've been at West the past 8, I think is what it comes down to. So I also establishing the MVP program here at West High. Paul and I have limped through this year. Had to be a little creative with things. Looking to really roll it out though next year with everybody coming back in person and getting things done that way. So this is stuff I've been doing for almost 25 years with the kids I work with. Severe, the more extreme behavioral and social emotional challenged students in our district. So look forward to being a part of this as well. So thank you.
Great, Rick, and thank you for your interest in this. Stacy Warren. Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Warren. I am an LASW and work as I'm a school social worker for Heartland AEA, but work in the same role as Amy Shupe. We share the region and serve 11 school districts. So we have about 40 buildings that we support for SEBMH. My background is a mental health provider. We have collaborated with Ellie Olson, who's a master trainer at Simpson, and then have also partnered with our districts who've gone through the STOP grant cohorts to get the MVP training. And we are just helping support getting rollout in our districts. So we are supporting Indianola, and Norwalk is getting ready to go through the cohort this next year.
Wonderful, Stacy, and thank you for your tireless advocacy for some of the work and the skills around this project with students, and for working with the adults in those schools. Thank you very much. And Stacia Walker.
I'm Stacia Walker. I'm with the Cedar Rapids Community School District. My official title is Bullying and Harassment Program Coordinator, but along with that work, I also support our district-wide attendance policies and procedures, as well as all of our social emotional learning, K-12, just kind of at the district level. And then this year, the end of this year, moving to next year, I'll also be supporting one of our high schools in all things SEBH.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And we are so excited to have you a part of this discussion today. Back to my good friend, Eric Alnez. Eric, welcome. And congratulations too, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So I've been off for 3 months from work. So I'm back last week. So I've been catching up. And when we were starting right now, I had a call coming because I'm on call right now. So I'm a victim advocate for crisis and advocacy services here in Des Moines. So we serve Polk and Warren County for sexual assaults and violent crimes. I met Alan a few years ago. I was trained by Tess, and I can't remember the other person out in Perry or Pella in MVP, and I started helping Simpson and Drake University roll out their program for their Sarah's program in Simpson, and also for the advocacy cohort in Drake University. And we do Welcome Week at Drake. So last year I tried coordinating MVP at Hoover High School, but trying to get it going with COVID really put a damper in everything. So everything came to a standstill. And then the community liaison, Gretchen, that worked there took a different role within DMPS. So we're starting from scratch again. So hopefully we can get it going at Hoover. If not, through the county, we're trying to work on different avenues, maybe even bringing it to the juvenile detention facility here in Des Moines.
Awesome, welcome. Eric, did you say Gretchen is no longer at Hoover?
She is, maybe I shouldn't have said that. She is not,
okay.
She is not, I know she's not gonna be at Hoover.
Okay.
I know she's gonna be taking over a virtual coursework that they're doing through DMPS. But if anybody knows her, or if anybody knows anybody in DMPS, please don't say anything. I may have let the cat out of the bag real quick there.
Okay, we didn't hear anything that you just told us, but thank you for him. Okay, she's awesome.
Yes.
Suzanne Friedman. Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Friedman, and I teach at UNI in the EdPsych Foundations and Leadership Studies Department. I teach development classes. I teach a counseling children and adolescent class to school psychology graduate students. And I teach a class on interpersonal forgiveness, the psychology of interpersonal forgiveness, which is also my research area. And I most recently created a forgiveness education curriculum for upper level elementary school children. So I'm excited to be working with all of you on this project.
Great. Susie, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today. Have I missed anyone? I'm going through my list here.
Stephanie Neff has joined us, Alan.
Stephanie. Oh, hi, there you are. You're on my screen. Stephanie.
Hi.
Name, favorite color? No, I'm just teasing. No.
Yeah. Oh. That was an easy question. No, I apologize for being late. Stephanie Neff with Wellness and Community Partnership Supervisor at Cedar Rapids Community School District. Have been involved with MVP, trying to get MVP up and running in the district for a number of years now with our wonderful team at the district and Jenny Wagner at Kennedy. And my background is health education, and I'm just moving into my dissertation phase of my PhD in community health education and promotion, looking at psychological capital of school employees. So glad to be part of this team.
You are busy. That is incredible. And for some of you, Stephanie's name may be familiar. I have at most trainings mentioned Stephanie's name, her background in health. We have a one-page document that Stephanie helped put together that kind of connects some of the dots between the MVP and our health education curriculum in secondary schools. It's a great piece to kind of validate and affirm some of the strategies and skills that I have always thought that this practice, this model, this MVP model is a way for youngsters to practice health after health is done in some ways. So, all right, now have I captured everyone? Has everybody had a chance to go? All right.
I believe so.
I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to quickly review where we're headed today and the discussions. And these should have appeared in your inbox earlier. And Michael, I've also, and Allison and Susie, I'll also make you co-host here as we get to the sharing of screens so that we can all kind of see that. Okay, so in this short time that I would have today, first of all, do you see the agenda on my screen?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So after, I'm going to say a few more words about this particular initiative. I mentioned some of it in the brief introduction before, but I'll say just a few more words. And then I'm going to invite Dr. Fleming, Michael, to talk about some of the feedback that we got from student mentors, some of your students that responded to a survey that we did a year ago. This was as we were winding down last school year, if you remember, we were all isolated and it was just going crazy, right? And we thought, well, there's a lot of high school mentors probably sitting home being bored right now. Maybe they'll fill out a survey. And sure enough, 300 and some did. And anyway, there's some really awesome information that they shared with us about their experiences as mentors. And Michael's going to share some of that with you. That's going to set us up to look at a configuration or a way for us to think about the structure and the organization of what it is we're all inviting you and ourselves to consider doing with regards to this project. And then I'll talk about some of the expectations and roles that we have. And I want to just really be honest and be clear that there are some of us on this call who are still in the kind of investigative stage, perhaps, and kind of wondering a little bit more about what this looks like and sounds like. And I'm hoping that you see yourself in a role as a part of this. However, I know that if this is something that you're unable to commit to, or maybe maybe it's not a good as fit as maybe you thought it might be, no worries. There are so many other ways to engage you as we move forward in the next several months and years that there's plenty of opportunity to participate. So I just want to be really clear that this is still kind of, for some of you, an investigative stage, and I honor that, and I appreciate your willingness to kind of hang with us and hear more about, and at the end of the day, be able to answer and respond to some questions that folks may have. I'm going to then invite Allison to talk about and share a couple of examples for us to use collectively as a team around how we might structure lessons and why we would want to do it in that fashion. Susie has agreed to take, as she mentioned, she's written some curriculum around forgiveness in upper elementary schools. And I've had the pleasure of hearing Susie present on her work and also on the activities. And as I was sitting there on the Zoom listening to her present, my wheels were spinning. It's like, oh my gosh, this stuff there's so many similar skills and applicable skills, not just with the prevention piece, but the skills and knowledge around social emotional learning, and particularly with older adolescents, when older adolescents are oftentimes dealing with a lot of hurt and trauma, right? And trying to, come to seek healing and support and help. And anyway, I was really excited about Susie's work and Dr. Friedman's work, and I was really excited to have her be interested in this discussion today. So she's going to share with you kind of how this document, how these templates could be used to actually help us formulate our potential activities and lessons. I'll then kind of walk through again, review some information that I hope most of you received at one point in time in our exchanges back and forth, kind of a timeline. I mentioned in my short email to you today that it's a bit aggressive. It's a bit probably uncharacteristic in terms of how, like, groups like Character Strong and other organizations that CASEL has supported over the years in terms of developing and creating curriculum. I understand this is a process, and it just seems like, again, this is a sense of urgency for, I think, for some of us in the field who are working with youngsters, and particularly these last 12 to 14, 16 months, we as a state, as a district, as a person, as a nation, have been dealing with all kinds of really challenging issues. And I think now is as good a time as any, if not now, I'm not sure when. And then I want to spend some time clarifying and responding to questions that folks may have. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And before I turn over to Mike for a few comments to share some feedback from mentors, which was really one of the, for me, in the 20 some years of doing this, I was so excited to hear what mentors were saying, almost unsolicited, in terms of what they were getting out of their role as a mentor, what they were looking forward to, what they're going to miss as being graduates and moving on. As you know, as Joe mentioned, 40-some senior mentors there at Marshalltown, and it was an awesome learning opportunity for me to hear and read the comments from the students. And when Michael and I were going through those, it just was like a slap in the face. So obvious that what they were talking about were what we hoped as educators and as constituents in secondary education students would walk away with as a result of spending the last 13 years in the K-12 or pre-K through 12 school system around some of the social and emotional competencies and some of the learning targets. So that along with some conversations with colleagues on this call and some who were not able to make it, really kind of stating what about our students as they age up, as they go through high school, they have this experience as ninth graders or as first year students. We have juniors and seniors, mentors who are engaged, and so many of you have been, I know, incredibly impressed with, and you watch their learning and you watch their discovery of themselves, who they are, what they stand for, what their passions, what their interests, how they see things like justice and restitution and respect, how they have different eyes almost. Like you can't unlearn and unsee some of the things that they have been exposed to, and they are coming into the age where they'll soon be leaving the security and perhaps some of the predictability of their home life and moving on to college, the military, or world of work. And I think, wow, they have a set of skills and have been thinking about some really important questions that maybe some of their peers haven't been asking, which then goes back to the rationale for why is what we're talking about today and potentially going to produce such an important piece, because it adds to the conversations that a lot of youngsters, a lot of our kids in high schools want to have. Some are having them, obviously at home or with peers or with, folks like you, trusted adults in the field. And those are rich, precious moments for all of us to be able to watch and to share and to mentor, these young adults take the next step. And so it seemed like, as I mentioned before, and then I'm gonna turn over to Michael, it seemed like this is such an important, and now is the time for us to really think about more intentionally and more seriously, how can we support some of the discussions that would springboard off of what the students experienced as ninth graders, and how can that conversation be intentional, but also incredibly relevant and meaningful, and really being bold in talking about some of the issues that we know our youngsters want to talk about. So I'm just going to pause right there. Let me check here a moment. All right, Logan, we got your message, and okay. All right. So
Alan, Kimberly has joined us. Everybody's there. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly Fitton. Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome. Kimberly, could you do just a quick...
Hi, guys. Sorry. Thanks to the people who sent me the link. I appreciate it. I don't know where it disappeared to, so I really appreciate it. I'm Kimberly Fitton. I'm one of the APs at Liberty High School and do some education consulting, I think, right? What was our introduction? Favorite hobby? Where we'd like to be right now out of school?
You're where you want to be right now, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, Kimberly, Kimberly, thank you. And actually, and you can watch and learn some of Kimberly's work on the awesome video that she helped produce for our virtual MVP summit for 2020. So Kimberly, thank you for being part of this conversation today. So Michael, take it away.
All right. I'm going to do the, what are you seeing now?
I see your slides. Yep.
Where I'm supposed to be?
Yep, I see your slides.
All right. Okay, great. So welcome everyone. As Alan shared, what I wanted to share with you today is some of what we were learning from the mentors, many of your mentors, and the kind of connection between social emotional learning. Just real briefly, just wanted to kind of present, SEL out there, and so that kind of set the stage for some other conversations. We know in general that when students develop social emotional learning and it's implemented in schools, that there's a lot of positive things that come out. It's research that shows, increases graduation rates, academic achievement, pro-social skills, and disciplinary issues, decrease. And I think from personal experience out in the field among many of you, and from your readings and the research, it's becoming increasingly recognized as an important part of students' development by community folks, school folks, positive youth development folks, kind of across the board. So Castle out of Harvard is designated, 5 competency areas associated with SEL. And I just kind of want to share these real briefly to kind of set the stage for some of what we were seeing the connection of. One is the self-awareness, the ability to accurately recognize, emotions, thoughts, assess one's strengths, limitations, sense of self-confidence, social awareness, being able to kind of empathize and see the perspective of others, understand social norms of behavior, both pro-social behavior, understand family and community resources and supports, responsible decision making, being able to make, constructive choices about behavior, personal behavior, standards, recognizing the consequences of various actions. These are 3 of the areas. Self-management, the ability to regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. Working toward personal and academic goals, and then relationship skills, the ability to maintain healthy and rewarding relationships. So those are, the 5 core areas that associate with social emotional learning. And we see this in, number of the research findings and projects. And so these are kind of what we've been organizing around. So as Alan mentioned, back about a year ago, we did this survey and we just, reached out to the advisors and the mentors that were doing the work. And we surprisingly, I can remember the conversation with Alan. It's like, we were all on Zoom calls and it's like, Alan, we've got over 300 students that have responded, and we're, both kind of astounded. But what we were wanting to do is just kind of tap into the students, see how they're doing, and basically ask, 3 questions. These questions were parallel ones that we had done at an MVP mentor luncheon down in Des Moines several years ago. And it was very informative just to kind of hear from the mentors how MVP had changed their thinking, how they feel about things, how they think about things. So drawing from that, we pose these 3 core questions. We had another question that asked more about, COVID times, but from these 3 questions, we got some great narrative and responses to all of these. So we were fortunate to have a couple of graduate students working with us this past year. And what they did independently is to kind of dive into the mentors' narratives kind of just see what kind of themes were coming out from the narrative. So what we were seeing as they were identifying themes and through their work is that there is some connection to some of these core, SEL learning targets. So, under self-awareness, these are some of the, you see the identifying emotions as, example of one of the learning targets. And what we were seeing from the mentors and some of the narrative are these types of themes, increasing the understanding and severity of bullying and violence issues happening in the school, the negative use and impact of language, being able to kind of think through how you respond to different issues and in terms of responding to issues, but also in terms of their working with their students that they were mentoring. So as an example, some of the words that came out, we've tried to capture some of the quotes, and you can read some of these here. You get the sense of just a greater awareness of the issues that were happening in school and what they were doing and what they were not doing in response. And this PowerPoint, we can send out. I'm going to, mindful of time here, going to go through some of these, quickly. So with the SEL area of self-management, these are the learning targets that Castle and Iowa has identified under self-management. And these were some of the themes that were coming out of the narrative that we saw, some connection. Feeling more motivated, more ready to engage in violence prevention, carrying this work forward, being motivated to respond to situations in their personal life or in their school life. And again, here's some of the quotes that are kind of representative of some of these areas here. You see taking the skills of MVP outside and helping feeling self-confident, leadership skills, being able to speak up. It's a challenge when you're standing in front of peers in the school, even if they're younger peers, being a voice on these issues. Social awareness, the learning targets, being able to kind of develop empathy, appreciating diversity of thought, opinion, of experiences, respect for others, feeling a sense of belonging and needing to take action, increasing perspective on how gender violence and bullying impacts others, or some of the narratives that came out. And here's some of their words that we kind of link to some of these competency areas. It helped me put in perspective how some of the things we see in school every day are actually very wrong, and how gender violence can go both ways. And so increasing awareness of what's happening in school, and awareness is one of the key issues of our steps of the MVP model. And then relationship skills, being able to look at communication, social engagement, relationship building. And one of the things that the mentors talked about is the connections that they were building with their students and with each other. So we can see some of the narratives here. I look out for more people and they become friends, and I would usually keep relationships strong and teach my children. So there's a sense of kind of a connectedness to class, a connectedness to folks outside the school, and kind of carrying it forward. And then responsible decision making. So, again, you see some of the themes that we identified in some of the narrative here. So it was, interesting to read these and to see these things emerge and start to see the connection. One of the graduate students, Hasina, in her work with all these saw, kind of broke it down into some of the SEL competency areas and how much the narrative spoke to some of these areas, which may inform us as we look forward to some of the work that we're doing. So that's kind of a quick overview of some of what we are hearing from the mentors, and some of the readings and support work that we've been doing on SEL and MVP. This acronym, I thought, and suggestion for best practices kind of perhaps help set the stage, in that they talk about the acronym SAFE, that, SEL design programming needs to be sequenced, having a connected and coordinated set of activities to foster skill development. And Alan will talk about, what we're looking at grades 10, 11, and 12, using active forms of learning to help students master new skills, focus, emphasizing the development of personal social skills, and explicit, targeting specific social emotional skills. So that's part of the reason why we're asking for, your interest areas in terms of SEL, and as we kind of move forward, this kind of framework will help guide some of our discussion. So I know we're mindful of time, so send me questions at the end thing. If I omitted anything, Alan, let me know, or you can send in the chat. And this is, again, just a quick overview and a lot of conversation happening from here on.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Back over to you, Alan.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. And as Michael mentioned, he'll send you a copy of those slides so you can read those quotes further to do some investigation. I want to apologize. I sent the Zoom link, I think I sent for 3:30 to 5 today, and the agenda that I was showing earlier was a 3 to 5 agenda. So now that kind of explains maybe you were all playing along very well. There was no indication I was making this really crazy error here. So I reshuffled my head kind of where we were with time-wise, and I apologize for the confusion around those times. I would like to just say just a couple words and then invite Allison and Susie to talk about some of the structures. But then I really want to pause and spend the last several minutes really thinking about, as a diverse group that you are with regards to background, skills, knowledge, different categories, different areas of emphasis. Some of you are, operate well in multiple areas. Some of you have some expertise in one or two areas. And so part of, I think, the way we will want to begin to kind of identify maybe some target topics for individuals is just to pause and to give you all a chance to share from and look at a list that we've generated. It's not an exclusive list, but it's a good start. And I think some of those items have shown up in your inbox with documents from myself. So let me share my screen one more time here. Allison and Susie, get ready to go for this. And hopefully, and you receive this in your inbox from me. So one way to think about how we could structure conversations and lessons and activities around that support social emotional learning and that pick up of what MVP would have started or would have began those discussions at grade 9 is listed on this matrix. And so across the top of the matrix horizontally, you'll see each of the 5 competencies that Michael shared. It's also the 5 competencies that Iowa has with their SEL competencies. And then the targets, the learning targets, if you will, that are associated with each of those 5 competencies. Yes, and just for anybody that has to leave early, we'll record this and give you a copy of it, and then I'll circle back with you as well. So thanks for staying on as long as you can. Those of you who have to leave early, thank you, and I'll be in touch. On the left hand, or on the vertical column there, thinking about the MVP domains around raising awareness, open dialogue, critical thinking, and inspiring leadership. I can imagine, I can see those skill sets and those activities kind of launching, kind of graduating, if you will, with each grade level, moving from, moving just beyond the notice and the observations, which is a part of MVP, is getting kids to notice and to pay attention to what's going on. That's why we talk about the different types of abuse and different types of respect, so that kids understand that, harm and abuse happens on a continuum. Being respectful can happen verbally, emotionally, technologically, etc. So we're expanding their vision or their understanding, if you will, of these behaviors. But there's more to that, how they feel about some of the conversations or situations that they're seeing their peers being involved in or engaged in, or themselves having questions. And how are they critically thinking about these things? How are they interpreting things? What's supporting those? What's helping them feed and understand as their brains begin to, become much more, in the, abstract and the cognitive awarenesses that they are beginning to, demonstrate and to model with each other. And then that final senior year, thinking about activities that really kind of, for lots of different structures, provide an opportunity to do some demonstration, or in this case, inspiring leadership, inspiring some type of action. I imagine some discussions with upper class students, like seniors, for example, around some of the topics related to healthy relationships that we're going to talk about in just a minute. I imagine some opportunities for these students to maybe create as a part of a course requirement for, a government or a civics class, or maybe an upper level language arts class, doing a paper, doing a research article, paper on something, where they are actually applying some of the information that they have been kind of being exposed to and challenged to think about over the last 3 or 4 years, and how this particular project can imagine and watch, think developmentally as youngsters graduate from grades 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, what opportunities there are for the activities to kind of continue to challenge and to grow and expand, but also leave a chance for these youngsters to do some a demonstration, volunteering, a modeling, some advocacy, some type of leadership, where they can discover how their own skill sets are really supporting, and that what's their style of leadership? Who are they? What skills do they have, and how do they define those as leaders? So I think this matrix can be a tool for us as a group to identify how we can make sure that we're identifying and creating opportunities for lessons or discussions that focus on these various learning targets, and kind of help us kind of spread things out, some of the scope and sequence that Michael was talking about earlier. So you have that. So please look at that, if you will. Just a couple more thoughts here, and then Allison, I'm going to ask you to share your screen as well. So and I want to thank Jenny Wagner for posting this, and I sent you a link here, thinking about teaching fearless with regards to social emotional learning, and what an opportunity it is for us to create and support discussions and conversations with our students who are aging up and taking on and wanting to take on some of more challenging and experiencing more gray areas in their life, so to speak. And so when you get a chance, check out the article there that that Jenny passed along. I think it's a really great, some foundational things to be mindful of as it relates to what these lessons could look like. So with that, Allison, if I haven't lost too many folks here thus far, one of the things that I appreciate with Allison's help is when we go off in 14 or 15 different directions over the course of the next few weeks, and with that particular matrix and some other information, begin to think about what might a lesson look like for a 10th grader, 11th grader, or a 12th grader. It's important for us, I think, to have a really potential consistent template or format to do that, because on the back end of this is the opportunity for us as a group to have this published and put together in a way that both tactile, that we have a hard copy for our constituents in the field, but then we also have a digital version which will be able to be passed along and shared very easily beyond the borders of Iowa, if that's the case. So Allison, I'm make sure that I may have made you a co-host here. I apologize if I haven't done that yet. Hang on one second. I must have.
I'm good. I got it. Yeah,
all right.
I'm good. Can you
all
guys see my screen? It's a lesson plan.
Yes.
Okay. So I will be super brief. So basically this came out of looking at lots of different lesson plans, since part of what I do in the College of Ed is work in the Department of Teaching, and we teach how to write lesson plans. So I have a whole plethora, and as many of you know, as educators, there's 1,000 different ways. And so I just kind of took what our needs were as a group of talking about what we needed to put together something and put it into one document. So this is a working document, but this is what we have currently. This first portion right here is kind of the beforehand, what you would do before you actually teach the lesson. So what is the aim, your learning outcomes, kind of what is your vision of it? Facilitator background. So this is kind of what does that facilitator need to know in order to do the lesson. Vocabulary, a lot of times as educators, as teachers, and the students don't necessarily have that background information, vocabulary. I think of myself teaching about anti-bias education to my early childhood pre-service teachers. And I think 2, maybe 3 students knew what microaggressions were this spring. And so just kind of getting some of that basic vocabulary out of the way. So students, you're all speaking kind of the same language. So what vocabulary might students and educators need to know before starting the lesson, the prep work, and then additional resources. This might be videos, books, you know what works well. And then this is the actual lesson plan. So this is actually what the teacher, the facilitator would be doing. So it's pretty basic, kind of what we're mostly used to. The piece that we don't always have in a lot of lessons is that remediation and extension. So if that facilitator needs to backstep because students just weren't quite where they needed to be, what are some resources that facilitator could use to enrich what they were or to enhance what they were doing? And then on the other end, extension. So students were already there. What can they do to give to students maybe walking away and say, hey, here's some more resources. I can see you're really interested in this. So that is the quick version of this. I do have a couple of other examples of lesson plans that we could look over, but really I think this one might kind of hit all of the pieces that I think we're looking for as we move forward in the social emotional piece. That was really fast. I talked really fast. Is there anything else that you want me to hit on, Alan?
No, that's really helpful. So I'm kind of implying that we're holding our questions here to
okay.
from Sue. So thank you, Allison, and I really appreciate your thinking about this. And one of the things that, as I know, has been a huge barrier for having social and emotional learning conversations and lessons really have a footprint in high schools, particularly, is the fact that they haven't been it's not an activity. It's not a, it's been presented as almost an additional preparation or additional prep for staff. And that's a really challenging task to ask folks to do who are already maxed out with their respective teaching assignments, which is why in fact we started with really having mentors, student juniors and seniors being some of those key facilitators with those conversations with freshmen to begin with, because of the what the staff were already doing. They told us they would support the mentors, but we're a bit probably relieved to know that they weren't responsible for having to facilitate and to learn that prep. So anyway, as Allison was talking, we're wanting to have a format that is absolutely seamless, but also requires a little tiny, maybe not much prep at all, but that still maintains a very robust and meaningful lesson. So Susie has graciously taken an example of that. Susie, if you can share your screen and show us using Allison's template what a lesson might look like. And folks, if it's okay, Susie, would you be okay to send this or make this available to our colleagues here after today as well?
Yes, I will. Sorry. I have a lot of things pulled up on my desktop, so I am looking for, there it is. Okay. So as you were speaking, can you all see that?
Yes, thank you, Susie.
Okay. So one of the things that, as I was working on this, and as you were speaking, Alan, that is going to be difficult for me specifically, is I just created a 16-lesson forgiveness education curriculum, 16 lessons for elementary school children using children's literature. So it's going to be challenging to do forgiveness education in 3 lessons, introduce this topic and help high school students understand it. And I worked on this lesson this morning using this template that Allison provided. And I wasn't exactly sure of this top part, Allison. So I just kind of like filled in my learning outcomes from below. And I wasn't sure facilitator background information, but I'm going to talk about something in a little bit. Vocabulary again. Well, maybe I'm going to talk about the facilitator background information. So after I show you this lesson, how I completed this template, I'm just going to show you very quickly the forgiveness education curriculum that I developed for elementary school children. And that includes a very long introduction about what forgiveness is and isn't, and some of the information that the teachers will be providing, and background information that I think teachers would need to know to be able to do the education. And so I see myself providing similar information for these high school teachers because there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about what forgiveness is and is not from a psychological perspective. We often think about forgiveness from a religion or philosophy lens, and I'm talking about it specifically from a psychological perspective. So I think introduction about it would be helpful to teachers who are planning to teach this lesson. So in terms of the template and the lesson plan, this is weird. Okay, so where are all my other objectives? Students will be able to define what forgiveness is and is not. Okay, hold on. Okay, I think when I moved it up here, it took those 3. So these are the objectives. And probably I might, this is just done very quickly and it's going to require some revision, but students will be able to recognize and explain how forgiveness relates to emotional well-being. Students will be able to identify contexts appropriate for forgiveness. And then, okay, so I guess, yeah. Those are 3 objectives. That's the same one. Okay, yeah. I don't know why the numbering got wrong when I moved the objectives up there.
That's happened before to me as well. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that, but I guess it's just 3 objectives. And then in terms of the S, I mean, we're going to be talking about feelings and recognizing and identifying emotions when we talk about how to forgive. What is forgiveness? So when I was looking at the chart, it seemed that self-awareness and responsible decision-making were the categories it fit best for the competencies. Students will become more aware of and identify how they express emotions and solve interpersonal problems. Students will be able to identify, analyze problem situations appropriate for interpersonal forgiveness and how forgiveness increases psychological well-being, and evaluate and reflect on how they usually cope with interpersonal hurt and feelings of anger. Maybe I repeated myself. So the hook. So what connections to past or future learning? How can you connect it to the real world? So one of the ways I thought connections to the real world for forgiveness was to ask them how they think about a recent hurt or conflict they experienced and how they cope with this hurt and or interpersonal conflict. Another thing, as you were talking, I was thinking of asking students, and this is the way I start my elementary school curriculum, how do students express anger? When they're angry, what do they do? And students really have a lot to say about that, to brainstorm, what do they do with anger? So that's another way. So students will be asked to reflect on and write their own definition of forgiveness and how they develop that definition. They will also be asked to reflect on whether they have heard about or seen forgiveness being practiced in society, on social media, or in their own lives. So that's the connection to the real world. Often we hear about examples of forgiveness occurring. Celebrities apologizing, politicians apologizing, granting forgiveness. Students will share their definitions of forgiveness as well as any examples of forgiveness seen in society with one other person. So that's kind of like just the introduction. And so this is the way I thought the lesson would play out. I know we've talked about icebreaker activities before. And one thing that I do is we do the game or activity, 2 truths and a lie. Each student in a small group can make up 2 truths and 1 lie about themselves, and you have to guess. And I like that because then I use that later on with the forgiveness content. So we do 2 truths and a lie as an icebreaker. And I assume students know each other, so they may have to, another icebreaker may be more appropriate, but students will then complete a true-false pretest regarding knowledge and understanding of forgiveness. That's fairly simple. Students then will be asked to think about their own definition of forgiveness, examples of forgiveness, and then they will share them in a small group and then have a brief large group discussion. Then there's a mini lecture on the psychological understanding and definition of forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, how forgiveness relates to emotional well-being, as well as what kind of context, when do we talk about forgiveness? And then I will have a handout, a PowerPoint of this information for teachers to give to students. I'm gonna get a short TED Talk or a video illustrating some of this information. Then as kind of a wrap-up assessment, students will engage in 2 truths and a lie activity in small groups using the information about forgiveness. So I want students to develop 2 truths about forgiveness that they learned and 1 lie. And then the small groups will share with each other and they have to figure out which is the lie. And then students will complete a true-false post-test regarding the same test they took as a pre-test. They do it again and they compare their responses. What did you learn about forgiveness today? So like forgiveness means forgetting. And they may have put true before, now they're going to put false because we went over that when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you forget what happened to you. Forgiveness does not equal forgetting. How will I know? The goal is that students will have a new understanding of interpersonal forgiveness from a psychological perspective, be able to explain how forgiving decreases anger and relates to emotional well-being. Students will be able to identify situations appropriate for forgiveness. Students' knowledge will be assessed through the two truths and a lie activity, as well as the true and false post-test. So I don't know if that makes sense. That's what I did. And maybe it's too ambitious for a 30-minute lesson. I just did this quickly today. And I've got to think about this remediation. So I didn't fill that out yet.
No, Susie, that's fine. And you know what, here's the deal. Obviously, because timing is, we want to try to aim for that 20 to 25 maybe minute lesson. So it could be that a lesson like that, maybe that is 2 lessons, maybe that's the equivalent of 2 lessons. And to your point, what you've done with regards to forgiveness and elementary curriculum, yeah, what would 3 lessons look like? So you can see that what we're doing is we're wanting students to kind of, will spark some interest, but potentially they'll be wanting to learn and know more. One of the things that I've been thinking about with regards to that teacher prep, like what does the facilitator need to know and understand before this lesson? And because I would love to have this be a digital version, one of the things that what we'll talk about is having video excerpts from you who created these discussions. You would record yourself, or we would record you giving that 2 or 3 minute introduction with the background, because of your expertise, your knowledge, your understanding of the topic. That takes a lot of pressure off me as a classroom facilitator to have to be able to replicate that, right? And why would I want to replicate something that you could say more concisely and would also be a nice excerpt, video excerpt in this discussion part. So I think there's some really interesting and creative ways that we can be able to tap into your expertise in various lessons that really take the pressure off of the facilitator. Whether the facilitator is an adult in the school, or whether the facilitator is maybe is one of the students who says, hey, I'd like to facilitate that lesson in 2 weeks on forgiveness. And they take your information, Susie, and they practice it and they prepare to deliver it to the classroom. There's some options that we can have. Before I open it up for questions, I do want to share one last screen. I sent you all a copy of this as well. And it's the timeline combination with some of the outcomes of what we're asking folks to consider doing. And to, I think, Joe's question, or one of the questions earlier, maybe it was Jenny's question in the chat box, or Stacey's, that's what it was. Susie, having a copy of what you shared would be helpful to all of us as we move forward. So the timeline, as aggressive as it is, the idea is to identify individuals. So thank you again for all to responding to the email request and talking about your interest in this. Today is actually the time where I wanted to come together to pull and to share with you some of the artifacts that we have collected or are creating to help move us forward, knowing full well that we're still in the very beginning kind of brainstorming kind of portion or timeline of this project. And so on the screen here, you can see mid-May, a week or so behind. I wanted to do this last week, but timing's wasn't on our side last week. But to be able to do what we're doing today and to talk about this project. What would happen between now and mid-July, so roughly, 6 weeks, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, is to be able to have each of you, again, moving forward, each of you identify a topic, and in that topic, create a sequence of 3 lessons, and imagining the lessons, the first lesson for primarily sophomore aged students, the second lesson geared towards juniors in high school, and the third lesson geared towards seniors in high school. And thinking about that matrix earlier, being able to think about, you know, the going from the observing, the awareness piece to the, you know, critical thinking, and then all the way up into thinking about that leadership piece, that inspiring others, that advocacy, that demonstration piece. That's kind of, I think, a way for our work to be clustered as the MVP models has been modeling for us: awareness, open dialogue, critical thinking, and then inspiring leadership. To me, that's a nice way for us to cluster these lessons together on various topics as students age up. And so the ask is to consider, again, 3 lessons and a handful, 2, 3 icebreaker activities. Some of you have already shared some today, so thank you for that. And I know that we have access, we know individuals who have access to many different styles, different types of icebreaker activities. Again, and the purpose of those is just to kind of help set the stage, create some continuity and some relationships with the students as we imagine them meeting once a week, once every 2 weeks in these advisory or breakout or homeroom sessions in their respective schools. It might look different depending on the school, but timing wise, a 25, 30-minute lesson would be probably the target time to imagine what those lessons would look like. What I would like to do then is to pull folks together to come to campus in July for a 1 or 2 day time together, face-to-face, and just spread things out on the wall and going back and looking at how these lessons are being sequenced and supporting of one another as students age up. Make sure that we're covering a wide swath of important topics that are of interest and are relevant to our high school students. And to start to kind of package or put together what these lessons, the order and how they're organized, and do some brainstorming, maybe some editing, some discussion and dialogue, some show and tell around what we're creating. It also would be a time for us to record some of you as the originators and as the developers of this lesson, to do that 2 or 3 minute introduction, some content expert information, if you will, that could be shared, that we could put together and bundle together in the document that would be then given to our colleagues across the state. So those would be some logistics or some technical things that we would have ready to go on site during those that time together. So again, and what we would like to do then is to, once that's together, then the team here at Northern Iowa would work with the graphics folks and our technical assistance folks here at University of Northern Iowa and put together the materials in a very concise sort of way, again, both hard copy and digital copy. And then hopefully in September and early fall, we would be able to invite some of you in the schools to do some piloting with these artifacts, with these lessons, if you will, with students during their homeroom session. So when the freshmen are doing MVP, or those first years are doing MVP lessons with their mentors, the other students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors would be going through some of these lessons that you all have helped prepare and create on their behalf. So,
Alan, just interject here. Each of you bring your own expertise and resources to the table. But as you are thinking about topics or areas, if there is additional resources that you would like to get information on, you have access to resources through your systems, but as part of a university, and then, you know, our work with violence and bullying prevention and the MVP model, and Allison and myself and Susie in terms of curriculum development, if there's resources that you are needing or wanting or curious about, you know, reach out to us, and we can assist at this end to, you know, put things on the table for you that you may want or need as you contemplate this.
Do you see the, thank you, Michael. Do you see the slide on the screen, the Jamboard slide? In the,
you see your topics.
Yeah, the topics of interest. Yeah, this is the first slide in that Jamboard slide link that I sent you in the email earlier today. And so what I'm going to do is just pause here and stop and think about questions, think about things that I've either sent you in your email or that we've shared today. And looking at these particular topics, love to hear from some of you to share, you know, areas that are of interest to you, and there may be more than one area on which to focus. And what I'd like to do then is to kind of build a list of topics and associate those with you all, with you, who in this group would be interested in or has an inclination to create some lessons and activities around restorative justice or around mindfulness or around leadership development. And so I'll just pause here and ask folks just to unmute themselves and ask a clarifying question or a comment that would be helpful. I know we've shared a lot today, and I'll just pause here.
Alan, I was looking at, and this is Joe, I was looking at the lesson plan. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me?
You're breaking up, Joe.
We can't hear you now, Joe.
No.
Okay.
Nope,
Can you hear
there we
me?
go. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with the system. I haven't do anything plugged in. But I was looking at the lesson plan, and I really think that, especially with our state becoming more multilingual, I think it's imperative that we have like academic vocabulary as well as general vocabulary in there, because we are seeing such an influx of ELL learners in our state that I think that it is important to address that. And as a part of like your remedial learning too, you could add some other specific categories or specific vocabulary in there for the remedial learning.
A great idea. Thank you. Allison, can you help me take notes on this? Awesome. Thank you. Joe, which of these on this list of topics for you personally, Joe, could I ask you, which of these is of interest to you? I mean, you may have more than one as well, but I'm just curious.
I got a few. Leadership development, I think, is really important. Racial equality, I'm really big on that. Positive peer relationships, that's important. Conflict mediation and CPS are my thing right now. And civic engagement at sometimes, but not as much as it used to be. I'd really like to see an action step on the end of the lesson plan to really take it to that next level, because when we think of AIW lesson planning, we can look at what we can do in the classroom and what we can do for each other. But when we hit that, hey, what are we doing outside of our closed doors? That's when we get that high order thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Could I ask folks to, in the chat box, could you take a moment and there may be a topic of interest that's not listed here. Again, this is not an exclusive list, but in the chat box, could you type in maybe 2 or 3 areas on here that you have a passion or a general interest in? That would be helpful, I think, as one kind of initial step, but nothing is etched in stone. So I I'd love to hear and see from yours as others could observe. So thank you for adding that into the chat at this time.
Alan, if I can just, for myself, I just want to admit that I'm happy to take whatever topic, and when I see a list, I just cannot even, I don't even know what to pick. It's like I'm in the chip aisle, and I just don't, I'll
Yeah.
help with all of them. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to put a topic, because whatever you want to give me, I will run with it. So is that okay?
Jenny, you just make my life so much easier. I don't know what I'd do without you. Yeah, no, that would be fine, Jenny. That would be fine. We can, what I'd like to do is to take the information of your interests on this call and really make sure that we're being respectful of your background, your expertise, your interests, but also the fact that you have so much to share with our students. So yeah, Jenny, I will definitely share with you where we use your expertise, no doubt. Rick.
Alan, question?
Yes, go ahead. Somebody had a question, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I've been trying to like jump in, but people jump in before I do.
Okay, Logan, hi.
Hi, I have a question about how MVP is getting impacted by the new diversity law.
Well, that's a great question. You know, I don't know that that's really been kind of combed out or kind of parceled out exactly. When we look at the skills of MVP around, helping create, dialogue, critical thinking, and inspiring leadership. And again, a lot of the information that we're sharing in MVP is connected to some of our health curriculum. It's also within other curricula around family, individuals and families, relationships, etc. So don't really know exactly the details on what is and what isn't going to be, or might draw some red flags. I'm not too concerned about this at this point in time, but Logan, that's a great question. And I think moving forward, we'll want to be mindful of that. But I think right now, being fearless and bold is going to be an asset for us as well. So good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Rick, I have, with your background, lots and your years of experience, what stands out for you in this list?
Well, so the restorative practices piece really is what we've been working on here throughout the school, doing restorative practice, holding circles. So my question was, when I saw that restorative justice, were you thinking of that more as a lesson or as using like the circle process to have, because the circle process can encompass all these topics.
Yeah.
You can actually have a conversation and activities within all those topics within that circle process.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
this is
so
where
the restorative pieces. Go ahead.
No, I keep interrupting you, Rick. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. So again, thinking about really scaling this down to a very applicable, relevant example or topic that a topic on restorative justice, and thinking about three lessons. Maybe for sophomores, it's one of those introductory pieces about the language, the building of vocabulary. What is it? Why is it important? What are some of those, maybe some key questions? And maybe the second or third activity that you create, Rick, potentially could be more of a let's examine this practice. Once you've described what the circle activity is, how could that be used in an area or a topic or a situation that students in high school as seniors might be experiencing or friends have experienced it in past? But I mean, I know that there's a certain amount of being general about this, but I think there's also, when you think about the skills that we're asking youngsters to stretch on, you know, beyond just the awareness piece, but like asking them what they think about this. How does this impact their lives? How is this activity or this topic showing up and being present in their reality, in their relationships? How would restorative justice or practice be a really good skill to have as a future partner or as a future, you know, coworker or employee or parent? I mean, those are some kind of examples, but your topics are so huge and large, and boiling them down into 3 topics or to 3 lessons seems, untenable, right? I'm not able to do that. But think about a certain specific skill that you really value about what your work with restorative justice practices, and how could a tiny bit of a nugget of truth in what you know be applied to a youngster's current life situation, dating, breaking up, family fallout, right? Relationships dissolved, rejection.
Right.
I think all of these topics are so huge. I think one of the ways that can provide some perspective on how to narrow is the linkage in the conversations that happened with MVP as a sophomore, and how does these topics connect with what they learned in as a freshman, when the mentors came in. So that's one slice or angle of perhaps is to think of this big area. How do I narrow into 3 lesson plans? Well, what happened in the freshman year as a starter, as a base, could be one perspective.
I'm mindful of the clock, and I know that we've covered a lot of information. So being a part of this, I'll just one last thing here. What your knowledge, there's value in it. There's value for your other colleagues in the field. There's value for our students, and I want to reimburse you for your knowledge, although it's not near enough to compensate for what you do on a daily basis or what we ask you to do. But if you're interested in and want to continue with this process, I have the opportunity to provide each of you $1,000 stipend to be a part of this. And at the end of the day, be able to look back with you collectively and say that we've put together a series of 35, 40 activities and lessons that we believe, through our background, our experiences, connect the dots between what the discussions MVP start as 9th graders and how the social emotional learning competencies are accentuated and supported because of these extra conversations that we're providing schools to engage in. So that commitment on your part is to say, I would be able to, for sure, create these lessons, throw in some icebreaker activities. We would meet face to face, again, to kind of continue to resolve and fine tune these collective lessons, if you will. And then we would get organized and published here on our end, and be able to validate and say thank you to you and for what you've created as a part of this project. So what I'd like to do is we'll end this conversation since it's 5:03 and we're beyond the 5 o'clock hour. But I will be circling back. I'm gonna kind of lay low with the emails as you finish up some of your school year. I know Iowa City, for example, Rick, June 11th seemed like a long time from now. I will want to be respectful of that, but I will be sending you some additional information for things related to our time today. and also to welcome any questions or clarifying questions that you have to send to me, Michael and Susie and Allison and I, or anybody else on this discussion today. It'll be an awesome resource for all of us. I'm privileged to be able to work and know most of you, and I'm really excited about this opportunity. And I would love to be able to touch base with you again in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and to again, follow up, answer questions, provide some support. You know how to get a hold of me with an email. I think together we can create something really of value and meaningful and unique. There won't be another collection of lessons like this anywhere put together. And so with—
Hey, Alan, Joe has a question. Raised her hand before we forget.
Yeah, if you send some brainstorming stuff. Yes.
Yeah, I've got actually 2 questions. One, I was thinking about sending you some brainstorming ideas, and then because you know how I go crazy. And then I was thinking about the in the box. So to give an idea for people that we were thinking about the 3-step lessons, if we were talking about like in the box and stereotyping in 9th grade, then in 10th grade we could talk about pronouns and how important identifying the correct pronoun for yourself and others is. And then in senior grade, or that would be like sophomore, and then juniors could be like, and then I have my culture piece on top of it. And then your senior grade could be like, not only do I have my culture piece, but here's what I want to say that I am for the world. So I was thinking about those things as you were going along and trying to give an example of the 3 or 4 lessons that could go. And so they're kind of like stepping stones that build on top of each other.
Yeah, that
Hey, Alan.
You captured it. Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to bounce off her really quick. If anybody does that, you could wrap that up with the seniors talking about intersectionality.
Mm.
Just girl, I think you and I need to get together and write this lesson.
Let's do it.
Exactly. Well, and I think somebody mentioned this earlier too, an opportunity to brainstorm together or to collaborate together on this. I know some of you have already thought about doing that. Absolutely. At the end of the day, what we'd like to do is just to be able to have an excellent set of lessons that, again, at best, we're going to offer these to our colleagues and ask that they strongly consider using these. Another question with regards to July 19th, that sometime during that week will be, I'll send out, if not a doodle, some type of way to identify timing. Most of you communicate to me that week works right now. I understand things come up, but it would be awesome to have folks face-to-face together. And again, once we're on the tail end of doing some of the initial writing and putting together, we can kind of see where maybe some gaps are, or how we can do some tweaking and really make this a very comprehensive, rich discussion. So anyway, absolutely, Amy, I will get those dates on to you as soon as I can for July 19th, week of 19th. All right. I'm going to pause there. And with that, any last question or comment before we adjourn? You've been so patient, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please type them and email myself, Michael, Allison, or Susie, and we'll be in touch. All right.
So enjoy the